I'm Norma Maloney, proprietor of Red Rider Studios in Taylor, Texas.
All right. Hello, Out Bosses. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to this week's episode of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. And on this week's episode, I am really excited to be welcoming Norma Maloney, who is calling all the way from Austin, Texas. So, Norma, are you ready to inspire fellow Out Bosses?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So just a little bit of background about Norma Jean. She is the founder of Red Rider Studios, where she hones her skills as a sign painter and muralist. And she has 3 decades of painting experience, hailing all the way from Kentucky. And she works closely with clients from small brick and mortar stores all the way to Facebook. She hand paints everything, and she does that in Texas and everywhere else. And she started out doing this business when it seemed that everyone else had quit. And today she has one of the busiest sign studios in America, which is now in Renaissance. So I am super thrilled to have you on the show, Norma Jean. I think you're our first sign painter and muralist, and it seems like you're crushing it in business, right? Like you're working with companies like Facebook, you're all over Texas, and I'm really just interested in learning more about your business. So to kick us off, why don't you tell us about your business and truly what makes it unique?
Well, what makes sign painting unique is it's something that basically went away for about 3 decades. Sign painting originally started as the first form of advertisement besides buildings before we had television and those types of media to advertise businesses. And throughout the decades of 50s and 60s and 70s, it was still flourishing, and there would be sign companies that would employ up to 120 sign painters. And then the vinyl plotter came along in the 80s and put everyone out of business. And I was one of a handful of folks that just kind of hung in there. And now sign painting is back.
That's really awesome. And I'm actually thinking about my grandfather was a commercial artist. So I'm thinking when you're talking about the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I think he retired in maybe the 70s, but really a thriving practice. And I don't think he was a sign painter, but just kind of the role of technology and how that has really shifted your industry in particular. It's awesome to hear that there is this renaissance of sign painting coming back into the fold. And I had the opportunity to take a look at some of the pictures of your artwork, and it's incredible. And I'm curious right now, what was your business origin story? What was the motivation for you to get started in a business? You've been painting for 3 decades. So just as it seemed like sign painting was going away, I'm not quite sure when you started your business. So I'm interested in that evolution story. And if it was around the time when it looked like this was an industry that was kind of dying off, what was kind of going through your mind at that time?
I've been fascinated with typography since I was a kid. When other kids were out playing, I would be drawing cereal boxes and album covers. So typography has always been in my blood. So when I discovered sign painting and I found a sign painter that gave me some lessons. Sadly, he passed away about 2 weeks into our experience, but he told me I had come along a little bit too late. But when you do something that you love, you can't stop doing it. There wasn't any other option for me to just kind of hang in there.
Yeah, I like what you said. When you're doing something you love, you can't stop but doing it. And I think that it's always fun to be interviewing entrepreneurs like yourself, where passion is really driving you to just continue to create and do the things that you're good at in business, and that you're able to build a life around what you love, right? And with that, I'm curious right now today, as sign painting it's kind of going through, as you said, this renaissance, what has you most fired up? What's the thing that's waking you up every day that gets you really excited about what you're doing?
I've always been excited about what I'm doing. It's nice that I'm actually making a really good living right now.
Yeah.
So I can actually participate in my family and helping my kiddo through college and things like that. What really gets me excited is I hear from all kinds of folks, designers, architects, contact me because they're discovering that they can get work for their clients that's done by hand. And they're excited when they come to me. And a lot of them have things that are already designed that are quite stunning. So I work with a lot of different designers and architects all over the country, painting gorgeous things. So I never know from one day to the next if I'm going to be painting a wall or painting a vehicle or painting a storefront. So every day is different at Red Rider. So that keeps me going as well.
And how do all of these companies across the country, and it sounds like maybe around the globe, how do they find you? How do they know about your work and how you can help them?
Well, about 5 years ago, Faith Levine and Sam Macon did a documentary called Sign Painters, and it came with a a coffee table book called Sign Painters, and that went through Princeton Architectural Press, which is one of the presses that a lot of architects and designers get a lot of their resource material from. So they found out through that film and through that book that there were actual sign painters out there. And not only did it help those of us that stuck it out, there's a whole crop of kids that are excited about sign painting, and workshops are popping up all over the country and internationally. So we're out there and people know about us now. People used to ask me what I did for a living, and I said sign painter, and they would say, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" And now when I say that, they know what I'm talking about and they want to know more.
So I'm curious, you said that you never really know with your projects. You might be painting a car, you might be painting the side of a building. What's been the most interesting project that you've worked on since you've opened your business?
I can't pinpoint that because they're all fun and exciting. I did a billboard for a live painting at a museum that was pretty cool. But I can't really say that anything's more exciting than something else. Sometimes folks come in here and they've got a project that they want to throw $100 at, and then I can be talking to somebody and it's several $1,000s or more. And I get just excited about someone who wants me to paint a clock and someone that wants me to paint 3 floors at Facebook.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so you were saying in the 50s, the 60s, and 70s, sometimes companies would have 120 painters working for them. And I'm curious, in your business, I know that you own your business with your wife. Do you employ a lot of other people? Do you contract out your work? What does your business structure look like?
Yeah, I started out by myself, and I've pretty much run Red Ryder alone. I had a couple of partners that would help me along the way, but I tried the apprenticeship road there for a bit, for about 4 years, and that's a hit or miss situation, having somebody else in your space that you're teaching the trade to, and sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't work out so great. So I found it best for my model to contract out to other painters and people that are interested in working with me from time to time, and that takes the pressure off me that I don't have to employ someone full time, and when I come in here I know what to expect every day, and I don't have to deal with the drama that one has to deal with when they have a lot of folks in their space on a daily basis.
Yeah. And I ask that question because I often touch base with my guests to ask them about thinking about their workplace culture and just to be a part of the rainbow community. I'm sure we've all had an experience or know someone who's worked for someone else where they couldn't be their authentic selves, they couldn't talk about their partners or just be in the workplace. So I'm curious, as you're finding contractors, and it sounds like there's a resurgence of younger people who are really interested in learning the trade. How are you thinking about your workplace culture, and what's maybe one thing that you're doing to try to make it more inclusive at Red Ryder for people to work with you?
Well, the best way to do that is to be your authentic self. I came out at my workplace. I worked at a sign company in Lexington, Kentucky, back in 1984, when it was absolutely not okay in Kentucky to be gay at work. But I find that if you're your authentic self, that people will receive you. And I try to just be honest about who I am out of the gate. And I want people to feel the same way when they're around me, regardless of their situation.
And that's just something that you carry when you work with contractors and things like that, right? That you're who you are. You're able to talk about your wife. You all co-own your company. You're in a pretty progressive place in Texas. Do you find that just by showing up and being yourself that you're attracting people who really align with your values and what you're trying to accomplish in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Austin's a pretty progressive place. I actually live in Taylor, Texas at the moment because of the pricing out of artists in Austin. My wife and I decided to move to a smaller town so that I could afford to have my studio, and it's really close to her folks, and that's important to us. But yeah, when we came out to Taylor, that we did the same thing. We went to the local grocery store and decided to walk around holding hands just to see what the environment was like, and it was fine. So you just you have to be your authentic self no matter where you are. Obviously, you have to be cautious in certain situations. But oh my God, I have to change the subject for a minute. I saw this cute little lesbian couple this morning. They couldn't have been older than 20, walking in downtown Taylor holding hands. I smiled at them and they smiled at me, and with that knowing look. And I said, "You guys just made me so happy."
Yes, I love that.
We just live in a different world than we did. There are some things that haven't changed, but there definitely been a lot of progress made.
Well, thank you for sharing your story about coming out on the job in 1984 in Lexington, Kentucky. I mean, this shows that you are 100% authentic and you're willing to just be out there 100% of the time. And can you explain the geography of where Taylor, Texas is related to Austin, just for folks like me who aren't super familiar with Texas?
Sure. We're 38 miles northeast of Austin.
Okay. So,
and you can go 38 miles in any direction from Austin and have a completely different experience.
yes.
We are in fact in Texas, and if you know the politics of Texas, you know it's not so great.
Yeah, I'm doing some work for a client right now, and we're looking at when Texas was in session last year, there was something like 33 I think there were like anti-trans bills or anti-LGBT bills. So it's, yeah. I mean, it's definitely not Austin. And I asked that question just to get a better sense of Taylor and, for you to see a younger lesbian couple just out there holding hands and really celebrating their relationship is a positive sign, right? Like you move to a good place, right? Where people feel like they can be comfortable and your business is thriving there. So thank you for sharing that. I'd like to pivot and talk more about your LGBT identity in business. And I ask a couple of standard questions, and the first question is probably the hardest. In this question, I'm curious, since you started Red Ryder, if you felt like you worked with a client or you may have been contracted for something where you felt like you had to censor certain parts of who you are, maybe censoring certain parts that you're married to your wife or whatever it might be, because you might have been afraid of losing that contract or that revenue source. Is there something that comes specifically to mind? The reason why I ask is that there's a number of folks who tune into the show and they're often trying to negotiate how out they can be in their business. And I'm always looking to guests to kind of take us back to those hard times and then to walk us through around how you worked around it. So does something come up for you?
Well, I haven't had that experience since I came out in the 80s, which is why I decided to do that. I was so uncomfortable with not being able to talk about who I was or talk about my girlfriend. And, guys would ask you out and pry into your personal life. And I just had to put an end to that situation. And I haven't looked back. I know that it's not that easy for a lot of folks around the country, depending on where they are geographically, but I have never not talked about my personal life or my wife or who I am in any situation in order to gain a job. If I thought someone was going to discriminate against me, I wouldn't want their work.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that that's true. We've had a lot of guests on the show in similar situations to yourself where just kind of unapologetically, this is who I am, this is my family, and still really thriving, having businesses that are thriving because you're able to attract the people that you resonate with, right? And you know that you're going to do good work. So kind of on the flip of that, this is my favorite question. I'm curious for you to think about your lived experiences of being a part of the Rainbow family and some of the unique skills that you gain in being a part of the community. Is there anything that you, from those lived experiences, that you view as kind of superpowers that allow you to kind of stand apart from maybe other sign painters in your industry because you are LGBT?
Oh, that's such a good question. Sure. Well, I mean, believe it or not, sign painting is considered a male trade. I don't know what's so male about holding a paintbrush, but it is. So along the way, I've had sexual discrimination just on my gender identity as a female. And then you walk around looking like me, and I've changed over the years. I mean, I've had mohawks, and right now I, wear a cowboy hat and boots, but I'm not your standard female. And that's always come into play. I think you grow emotionally and intellectually and with your fear in the world when you're constantly facing that struggle about how you think other people perceive you. And when you are confronted with those situations and you move to the other side of it, of course you have superpower. That's a great way of putting it. I think all of us do. And I think going back to what you were talking about with Texas and politics, I think we have to keep in mind that the majority of Americans, the majority of people don't think like that. It's just a small group of people that happen to be in power.
Yes. I think that's definitely an important reminder. And it's almost like a fringe group of people, right? And yet the access to power and the damage that is being done is intense. And I like what you said about the superpower of, because you're aware of how other people might perceive you, you're able to almost get into their shoes around what's going on in their minds, right? And I don't know. I mean, I think like in business that definitely is helpful, right? You can almost kind of anticipate where people are coming from, and it's a lot of those nonverbal cues that might be able to help guide, like, oh, they're really into what I have to say in business, or they're not jiving with this message, whatever that might be. Like that is definitely a superpower that I see a lot of us having for expressing ourselves in different ways, and for you to express your gender in maybe a non-traditional kind of quote unquote feminine way that allowed you to kind of like really hone that superpower. So kind of considering some of the challenges with being LGBT, even when you're 100% out, and definitely the superpowers, I'm curious if there's something that you would like to share with our audience to really encourage them to be more authentic in their work, whether they're starting out in their business right now or they haven't quite got there, they're still working for someone else.
Yeah, I think what I like to pass on to my kids when I talk to my kids is that, and to my friends, and to folks that come in here and struggle, and I see them struggling, is that there's only one you, in the whole wide world, and you have one shot at this life. And the only way to get through it is to be completely true to yourself. And that's contagious. When people see you behaving that way, it's only a handful of folks that are going to shy away from that. And that's their own insecurity. That's their own stuff.
Yep. 100%. It makes me think of well, there's some disagreement about who said this, but I think Oscar Wilde was the one who said, be yourself, everyone else is taken, right? And so I love that quote. Before we kind of jump into talking about business mindset, I have one more question for you. Just kind of, it's clear that you've been engaged with LGBT communities since the 80s, potentially before then. I'm curious, in your business, are there ways that you're giving back to LGBT communities, especially those that are in Texas, that could use some additional support?
I could probably do a better job at that. I'm also in recovery, and I talk about my recovery very honestly and openly when I think it's necessary. But I think that what I do with who I am and being proud of who I am is always giving back. It's a daily reprieve of giving back to my community. I definitely think that I could do more. I immersed myself in our community when I lived in San Francisco, especially during the AIDS crisis. And I was pretty exhausted, emotionally exhausted from losing so many folks. And I think that took its toll on me. I definitely could do a better job in giving back to my community. Thanks for reminding me of that.
And thank you for everything that you've done. To survive the 80s and 90s, and that's so a part of our history as a rainbow community, and for all that you did during that time, which was incredibly challenging for this movement of just trying to be treated with respect and dignity is huge. So it's understandable for all of us. It's a good reminder of we have a responsibility to give back. We also have a responsibility of taking care of ourselves. And I think for you, just to share your story around recovery and the realities of taking care of yourself first is really, really important. And I think especially in business, we need to remind ourselves of that a lot, just at its most base level of not burning out, right, of the things that you love. And then on top of that, as you get involved with community, you can give back. And first and foremost, you have to take care of yourself. So I think that's a great reminder. So thank you for that. So we're going to pivot right now and talk a little bit about business mindset. And I like to include this in most interviews because for a lot of us getting started in business, there's this feeling of the imposter complex or the imposter syndrome. And I'm curious for you, Norma Jean, when you got started, it's clear you have a lot of talent as a fine artist and a painter, a muralist. And I'm still curious, as a business owner, when you got Red Ryder up and running, how did you overcome the feelings that, quote unquote, you're not ready yet, or you're not good enough, or did any of those kind of thoughts come up for you? And if so, how did you work around them in the early days of your business?
I still think I'm an imposter. Anytime you do something creative and I do something new every day, I'll think this is the time I'm going to get tripped up. If somebody wants me to design something, I can walk around a sketch for days before I jump in as if I've never done it before. I think we all share that same kind of fear. I definitely think that you have to confront that fear on a daily basis and kind of like breathe in and out, because it's not that big of a deal. People have told me, oh, you're so lucky, you own your own business. It doesn't have anything to do with luck. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of facing your fear and getting up every day and looking at that. And, there's so much joy being your own boss and kind of making your way through the world doing something you love. But it never really quite goes away.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah, right. I feel you on everything that you shared. And we had a guest a while back who answered this question. He was like, you know what? I just make friends with all of the voices that are the naysayers, right? And I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. It's not like trying to get rid of them, right? Because it seems like they're always with us on this journey. And I think that's right. And I think like there's another guest that we had, and he was talking about how for him being in business, right? Like when people are like, oh, you're so lucky and you're your own boss and all that, it's like for him, it's like this for me is a martial art, it's a discipline and I have to show up every day and do the things in order to be my own boss, it's like to self-sustain it. So those are all right on in terms of what you were saying. You had mentioned that you kind of breathe in and you breathe out when the voices arise. Like, so are there other strategies that you have when self-doubt arises? Like you were talking about when you approach a new project, you think about it for a couple of days of almost like with a beginner's mind, even though it's clear you're obviously an expert in your trade. So are there other strategies that you have in working around self-doubt?
Yeah, I talk to my wife.
Yeah.
Or I call my mom. They're my biggest fans. And whenever I have to put myself in check, and even when I'm tripping up, I can always count on my wife to tell me that I'm making a big mess of things or that I'm doing just fine. Keep doing what you're doing. You have to have people, surround yourself with people that are in your corner that are not naysayers. It's who you surround yourself with. And I'm very lucky through the years found that give yourself people that love you and believe in what you're doing, because we got enough naysaying going on in this country right now. We got to focus on what's good.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And I love how your wife and your mom are such a big part of your team. And it reminds me of when I first got started in business, and I knew it was going to be a big stretch for my parents, just to be like, hey, I'm leaving this really great job and I'm doing this thing. And I said, before you say anything, just say, you believe in me. That's like all I needed to hear from them. It's like all of your fears, I don't need to hear it because it's already there for me. Just like, please let me know you believe in me. And they're like, of course. And I was like, okay, awesome. Good. So I love that. And so it's clear your mom and your wife are on Team Norma Jean. And I also believe when you start a business, it takes a village, right, of people to really show up and support you, especially on the tough days. And so I'm curious for you, what's your approach in turning to the village when you get stuck in your business and you need to ask for help? Is that something that you struggle with, or is it not? What's your approach like when you are stuck and you need help? How do you get it?
I'm pretty good at asking for it. I have a good role model in how not to ask for help, and that's my wife. She'll be on fire before she asks for help. So I can see that's not working. So I tend to reach out when I need it because I know I can't waste any time.
Yeah.
I can't sit around in the problem. I get a lot of strength from myself, but if I need a hand, I don't have an issue at all with asking for some emotional support or some advice.
And who are some of the people that you turn to in the trade? So maybe not members of your family, although your wife is definitely a part of your business, but external to your business, who do you turn to when you are stuck?
That's a really great question. I was in this for a long time, for many, many years alone. There weren't any sign painters out there. And now we have a huge community. I have a lot of good friends that are sign painters, and I have a couple close friends that I'll reach out to. And it's interesting. Sometimes we work together and I'll call my friend Gibbs and say, hey, you want to come out to Texas and paint something with me? And it's amazing that you can still learn something after you've been doing it for 30 years by watching someone else do it different. So if I come across something now that I have an issue with, I haven't painted with this kind of paint before on this kind of surface, I can reach out and someone can tell me how to do it. And I don't have to feel silly for asking because we've all been there. That's the whole thing, right? We've all been there. If you don't ask, you're just going to do it wrong.
Yeah. Yes. I really like what you said, that you're painting with your peers, and just by doing a project with them, they're going to teach you something new, no matter how many times you've done. Even if it's the same project again and again and again, there's always a new way. And I get that. I get what you're saying. That helps you always continue to improve, right? Because clearly you're the go-to person. The business that you've created is known everywhere. When you're looking for sign painters, like Red Rider Studios is like top of the list, and yet you're still learning. I think it's humbling for people who are beginning, in the middle, wherever they are as artists, as it's an ongoing process, right? So to think a little bit more about your network, I'm curious what your take is on whether it's business mentors, coaches, accountability buddies, groups like masterminds. Are you a fan of these ways of getting support in business, in the everyday operations, or is that something that your wife does, or how do you approach collaboration in that way?
I don't even know what those are. I should be writing this down. I am so not a tech person. I was proud of myself for getting Skype hooked up on my computer.
Yeah, you did it.
And so afraid that I did it wrong that I had to have my wife come here and make sure that it was working properly.
That's why you're like partners in life and business, right? You complement each other.
You absolutely do. She's amazing. Yeah, I'm lucky.
Yeah, those things are definitely helpful for business owners. And I'm sure your proximity to being in Austin, just like with groups, there's a lot of women's mastermind groups, like for women business owners, and there's LGBT specific groups. Like we've had people from Start Out beyond the program, and people who've been in the business for decades or longer, similar trades, and just sharing what works and what doesn't. And I think they're helpful. So that's just kind of like for people who are just getting started, or if you've been in business for a really long time, is this another support avenue when you are stuck, and just to reach out to masterminds or a business coach or something like that.
I will. Well, I have an open studio policy here. So I have folks that email me and pop into my shop with questions and come visit me. And I'm always willing to give advice to anybody at any time. I never not answer an email or a phone call.
Nice. Are you mentoring younger people? Like you had mentioned in the beginning that there's like this resurgence of young people really wanting to learn the trade. Are you offering education programs, or do you mentor? I know you're kind of like wary of the apprenticeship programs. Are there ways that you're bringing in people that way just to kind of teach them the trade?
Yeah, I'm just wary because, I'm 55 years old and I came to this the hard way. And there is this sense of entitlement you have to navigate through with youngsters, get to the other side of that. And I've been trying to just take a little break. I'll probably jump back into it again because I've had a couple of really amazing experiences with young people. They're out there doing it right now. But it's just navigating your way through, and your own inability to, when you've been doing it alone for so long, to navigate someone else's situation and be a boss. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't even like that word. Yeah. Mentor is a better word, but when it comes right down to it, you've got to tell people what to do and how they're doing it wrong, and do it in a constructive way and be respectful, and at the same time have them respect you. And that is a really fine line, a very fine line, because I end up being someone's friend and I'm not able to be in charge.
Yeah. And I would imagine working with fellow artists, especially younger artists, there's like the whole creative vision and trying to be innovative and thinking different. And I can imagine that there might be tension with that as well. Do you notice that when in the past, when you have been kind of a mentor, with an apprentice, has that been some of the friction? Yeah,
that's definitely some of the friction. I mean, most of the friction is wanting to get there right now. Mm-hmm. I want this now. I want the work now. I want the money now. I want to be a good sign painter now, or a good artist now. And it comes with time. Just calm down, settle down, enjoy the process, enjoy the process. What's your hurry? It's just everyone's on this instant gratification timeline that, I'm too old to deal with,
I think you just named the episode, enjoy the process, what's your hurry? And I mean, there's something that I think is real in what you're saying, not just like for fine artists, right? I think broadly for entrepreneurs that are younger and just getting started, there's this urgency of like, I want to have an online business and, make $1 million this year, whatever the thing is. And it's like, I listen to some other podcasts, and one of my favorites often talks about this concept of being a hunter versus a farmer. And I think like what you're talking about is like the farmer approach where it's like over time, I've planted all these seeds, I've built all these relationships. People learn of me through my work and, and that's how you flourish, how your business has really grown. And I think for other folks, it's like, I'm out for the hunt. I'm out for the big thing that's going to take like 2 months. And I think distinguishing what your angle is like, I mean, maybe we're all a combination of all these things, but I definitely think for newer entrepreneurs, no matter your age, right, there can be an impatience of like, why isn't this taking it off? Like I've been doing it for 3 months, so I really like what you were saying there.
So much prefer being a farmer than a hunter.
Right. I mean, it's predictable, hopefully. I mean, yeah, you're going to have bad seasons, but I'm with you on that. I think slow and steady definitely wins the race, especially if you're in it for the long game, right? And
yes.
And I think it's interesting, like you had mentioned your age, you're 55. You've been how many years have you been in business with Red Ryder Studio?
I started Red Ryder in 96.
Okay.
I was painting signs before then for years, but I didn't call myself a sign painter until I was a sign painter.
Yeah. So 20 plus years, right? Like you've been in business doing what you've been doing.
Yes.
So clearly you're a farmer, right? And I'm curious, as you think about your future, is this something that you want to do indefinitely, or do you have a plan in terms of that you're going to sell your business, or what's the future hold as you look further down the road? Like, are you thinking about like your legacy, or I'm just curious for entrepreneurs who've been doing this for a while, like, is there an exit strategy, or is this just because you're so passionate, you're going to paint as long as you can paint?
I'm going to paint as long as I can paint. And I'm getting pretty tired. I have to tell you, my body is telling me to slow down, but I've been working on writing my memoir, or maybe 2 or 3. Augustine Burroughs is one of my favorites. I'd love to knock out a few of those and hand over my business to someone who cares about it. I would love for that to be my daughter, but she chose biology.
Yeah. I love it. Scientist. Awesome. It's very cool. Well, I love what you're saying. So clearly you love what you do, and you're going to do it as long as you can do it.
As long as you can.
Yeah, yeah. And so tell us a little bit more about your memoir, because that sounds super interesting. Are you just getting started, or do you have a plan? Like, are you going to launch it soon, or how can we get it? Like, when can we read it?
Well, that's one of my biggest fear projects. I've been told by dozens, if not hundreds of people that I'm a great storyteller. And I've got this story, and as soon as I sit down at the keyboard to write it, it starts out with like once upon a time,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I just can't seem to articulate it without thinking about how other people are going to perceive it and how it's going to be received, instead of just telling my story. So I keep reading memoirs and rereading them and reaching out to new ones to try to find my style, when really it's just my voice, and I really just have to sit down and do it. And I think it's the biggest hurdle I've ever had.
It's real.
It's pretty heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my life has not been an easy ride. I mentioned that I'm in recovery, but that's just part of the story. So writing it down makes it even more real. So I have to get ready to confront my fears and go through that journey again.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think your story, because you're getting that kind of vulnerability around it, and maybe the fear, that it's a story that we need to hear. So if I can kind of just be your cheerleader for a second, I will, because
You could be my new best friend if you want.
Okay. All right. I'm down with that too.
You're a great listener.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think that it's a story worth telling. I mean, everyone has a story. And I think just for more folks within our big, beautiful, diverse rainbow family, we need more voices. And there's not a scarcity mentality at all. I think like the more that we can step forward and share what our lives have been like, the more that we can give hope for younger generations, and also humility around like where we have been, because it's a little bit harder to find our history even with the internet. So please share your story. And if I can give a pitch for another person who's been on the program, Jen T. Grace, she runs a publishing company called Publish Your Purpose. And she's just, if you just want someone to talk to, she's brilliant, and she's a friend of the show, and she can help you work through some of the fears that pop up when writing, because I get it. I write stuff every week, and I still, there's always a part in me right before I hit publish where I'm like, oh, this is going out there to the world, and probably like 10 people read it, but there's still that fear. So I get it. And there's a lot of people out there that are ready to give you support, so you can get through it.
Thank you so much. Well, then I'll have something out next year.
Yes, I love it. Yes, you have a goal. All right. So it's something to work towards. I love that. Okay. So we're going to take a really quick sponsorship break. When we come back, we're going to get the opportunity to learn more about Norma Jean and find out more about her business. What does it look like for you to be the true leader, the outboss you know you can be? That's a question David DiGiorgio, friend of the show, takes seriously. He is on a mission to empower high achievers, outbosses, to become visionary leaders and speakers. In his upcoming book, Being Unapologetic, David shares his story of being severely bullied in school and how he's used that as the foundation for his success and is now on a mission to support you in sharing your message and voice with the world. When you pre-order the special, limited edition, not only will a portion of your purchase support a high school performing arts program, you and your story will be featured to inspire others. You're ready to be unapologetic now. To learn more, visit outboss.beingunapologetic.com. Again, that's outboss.beingunapologetic.com. Aspiring outbosses, are you struggling with taking that first entrepreneurial leap? Does the imposter syndrome prevent you from getting started? Have you considered seeking support, but you're just not sure where to turn? Look no further. The Out Entrepreneur now offers a coaching and mentorship program where you can access support and strategies to shift your mindset from employee to entrepreneur. If you're looking for accountability and a mentor who successfully busted out of the 9-to-5 lifestyle, let's schedule a time to talk today. Visit www.outentrepreneur.com and look for show notes from today's episode to schedule a call. Again, the URL is www.outentrepreneur.com. Together, let's welcome you to the wonderful world of being an outboss. All right. Welcome back, outbosses. We are now going into our bonus round where we'll have the chance to get to know Norma Jean just a little bit better, gain some insights on how we can bring our whole selves to work, and then learn one way that we can stay in touch with Norma Jean after the interview. All right, Norma Jean, are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Okay.
I love the hesitation. I promise you know the answers to all of these. Okay. Maybe with the exception to the first one, because it might not apply. But do you have a personal mantra or a quote that you reference that helps you stay motivated in your business?
No.
Okay. See, that's why they're quick fire. You can say yes or no, and you answered it right. Okay. So can you share one personal habit that helps you master yourself in your business?
Personal habit. I go to bed early and so I can get up early.
I love it. That's good advice. I think that's great advice, especially for people who believe that they need to work 24 hours around the clock. Okay, so name one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at.
I'm sorry, my wife just said taxes. Could you repeat?
Yes.
Could you repeat the question?
That might be right. Yeah, that might be the answer as your business partner. So one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at.
Taxes.
Yes, I do that too. So nice. That's a good thing to delegate. Definitely. Okay. So 2 more questions for you. The first is, can you share one piece of advice to inspire the next generation of outbosses to take that first entrepreneurial leap?
You can do it.
Yes.
You can do it.
Yeah. Sometimes that's all we need to hear, right?
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
If you can think it, you thought it, and that's the hardest thing, right? Now just take the steps to put it into place. And there's enough episodes out there of this show and so many other shows if you just need weekly inspiration. So just do it, right?
Just do it.
Yeah. So Norma Jean, thank you so much for your time today and for inspiring fellow outbosses. Before we go, can you please share one way that we can stay in touch with you and learn more about Red Rider Studios?
Sure. You can visit my website, redriderstudios.com, or you can email me at redriderstudios@gmail.com. And like I said earlier, I answer all emails and be happy to hear from you and help any way I can.
I love that. So we will include all of the ways to get in touch with Norma Jean in our show notes. So definitely check that out. And for Outbosses, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. It's always my privilege to connect with you and so many inspiring outbosses like Norma Jean. So for details from today's conversation, you can find them in the show notes at www.outentrepreneur.com. And as a next step, subscribe to the podcast, consider leaving a rating and review in iTunes, and be sure to share the show with a friend or loved one. That's the best way that we can get the show out there to help more out entrepreneurs. And for now, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.